Welcome to the Lenny and Maria Sanchez audio and video podcast series. You know, every single day we are just flooded with claims online. Some of them sound super scientific, and some are just plain bizarre. Today, we're going to roll up our sleeves and deconstruct the arguments behind two very, very different online analyses. We'll see how these claims get built up and how they get taken apart. So here's the game plan for today. We're going to kick things off by taking a really close look at a health study, specifically about hydrogen water, and see how its claims get scrutinized. After that, we are switching gears big time. We're going to jump headfirst into a famous pop culture mystery and investigate let's just say a very unconventional theory about where it came from.
All right, first up, the world of health and wellness science. To get into this, we're going to be digging into a source article by author Joachim Bartol. He really puts a study on a super popular wellness product right under the microscope.
So here's the million-dollar question that got this whole thing started. The research seems simple enough on the surface, right? But as our source material shows us pretty fast, the answer is way more complicated than you'd think. The whole point of the study was to see if drinking this special hydrogen-rich water could be some new secret weapon for weight loss. So let's see how they designed it. Okay, so the first source we're examining is deconstructing what's called a randomized controlled trial. Now that's usually considered one of the highest standards in scientific research. So let's break down exactly how this experiment was put together to test that big health claim. The trial itself was pretty small, just 35 adults who were dealing with obesity, and it ran for 8 weeks. The setup was actually quite simple. You had one group drinking a liter of hydrogen-rich water every day, and then you had the control group who drank the exact same amount of regular old tap water. And to measure the effect, they used a questionnaire to track everyone's food cravings. And here's what they found. The group drinking the hydrogen water, they reported feeling less hungry, a decrease in what's called subjective appetite. They also had about a 20% increase in GLP-1, which is a hormone that helps regulate appetite. But, and this is the absolute kicker, the most important part, there was zero significant difference in actual weight or body fat between the two groups when the 8 weeks were up. None. So let's get this straight. People felt a little different, their hormones changed a bit, but their bodies didn't actually change. This is exactly where the critique really kicks in. The author of our source, Joachim Bartol, makes a powerful argument that we should be extremely cautious with these findings, and he points to several major red flags in how the study was conducted. One of the biggest problems the author brings up is something called the multiple comparisons problem, or as it's sometimes called, p-hacking. Basically, think of it this way. If you test for enough different things all at once, dozens and dozens of variables, you're almost guaranteed to find something that looks like a positive result, just by pure random chance. It dramatically increases the risk of a false positive.
And this slide really lays out the author's entire critique perfectly. First, a massive conflict of interest. One of the researchers actually worked for the company that made the water. Huge red flag. The sample size was tiny, only 35 people, which makes any result way less reliable. On top of that, the study wasn't pre-registered. That means they didn't have to declare what they were looking for beforehand, so they could just highlight the interesting bits afterwards. And they tested a ton of other things: cholesterol, sleep quality, self-esteem. Found absolutely no difference, and yet those nothing to see here results aren't what they focused on.
Okay, deep breath. We are now going to pivot. And I mean pivot hard. We're leaving the world of scientific papers behind and jumping into a totally different kind of analysis. This one investigates a really strange quirk of pop culture and our collective memory. This is from a source by an author named Miles Mathis, and trust me, it's going to take us down a very different kind of rabbit hole. This right here is the heart of the mystery. It's a classic example of something called the Mandela effect. Tons of people, maybe even you, have this incredibly vivid, crystal clear memory of the character Dolly from the 1979 James Bond movie Moonraker. You remember she had braces on her teeth, right? It was this cute little visual gag because she falls for the bad guy Jaws, who has that famous metal mouth. Here's the thing though, if you go and watch that movie today, any version, on any format, the braces are gone. They're not there.
Now, the usual explanation for this kind of thing is, false memory, or our brains just filling in the gaps. But the author of this analysis, he completely throws those ideas out the window. He argues this is not a glitch in our heads. No, he says the film itself, the actual physical evidence, has been deliberately altered.
Okay, so if it's not our brains playing tricks on us, what in the world does the author claim is actually going on?
Well, he proposes a theory that is far more elaborate and honestly a lot more sinister to explain why so many people remember something that apparently just wasn't there.
The author lays out this whole multi-step theory. He claims that intelligence agencies are literally going back in time, digitally altering old movies and TV shows to change tiny little details like this. And the supposed reason for all this effort? He calls it a psychological operation or mass gaslighting. The alleged goal is to create widespread confusion, to destabilize things by making people question their own sanity and their own memories.
So, to back up this pretty extraordinary claim, the author points to a few things that he calls evidence. He focuses on digital artifacts, things like analyzing old VHS tape covers on eBay. He points to text from places like a BBC obituary and a James Bond fan site that seems to describe the braces, even when the pictures don't show them. He even claims that if you look close enough at the film itself, you can find frames where the digital erasure of the braces was done poorly, leaving little clues behind.
The way the author frames it, this isn't some sci-fi thing like a glitch in the Matrix or a parallel universe bleeding through. He presents it as a calculated, deliberate campaign of deception. He actually compares it to the Ministry of Truth from George Orwell's novel 1984, where the past is constantly being rewritten to control the present.
So let's just take a step back. We have walked through two completely different kinds of sources. The first one uses the established tools of scientific skepticism to pick apart a flawed research study. The second one uses conspiratorial reasoning to try and explain a strange phenomenon in our collective memory. So different, right?
But here's the thing. The critical point that connects these two very different case studies, it isn't about whether their conclusions are right or wrong. The real connection is the act of deconstruction itself. It's the simple, powerful act of taking a claim, whether it's from a science journal or some corner of the internet, and carefully, meticulously examining the evidence and the logic being used to prop it up.
And that's the real takeaway here. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a research paper about hydrogen water or an internet theory about a James Bond movie. These tools of critical thinking are universal. Asking who benefits from this claim, looking for those conflicts of interest, considering other, simpler explanations. These are absolutely vital skills for making your way through the information jungle we all live in today. And that really brings us to the end, but it leaves us with one final thought. After seeing how these two sources picked apart their subjects, one using science, the other using conspiracy, what piece of information, what so-called accepted fact, are you going to look at with a more critical eye? Thank you for listening to another session of the Lenny and Maria Sanchez audio and video podcast series, produced and archived at the website dailybriefs.info.